Misback.
All right, we can go ahead and start with the interview. So for the Philosophy Outreach Project, we are interviewing today Mr. Will Misback, and he is he has a coffee brand called Posteriori, is that correct?
Yeah, it's Latin, so I'm not 100% sure of the pronunciation. A posteriori, a posteriori.
Yeah, I've kind of heard it either way. So since you decided to do that after graduation, I had some questions. So starting back in high school, did you take any philosophy courses in high school? Were they available to you?
So I actually didn't take any philosophy classes in high school. They weren't available at my high school, which is fairly standard, I think, for most high schools. But I did take a couple of history classes where we did talk about some philosophical texts. So I was exposed to it slightly during high school.
So then what made you decide to start taking a philosophy class when you were at the University of Pittsburgh?
So one of my good friends, my freshman year, took a philosophy class, and we were both undeclared, thinking of majoring in biology at the time. And he took a philosophy class, and we talked about it a lot, like what he was learning and whatnot. And so we both, or he ended up, telling me that, I should take mine as soon as possible or whatever. Because at Pitt, there's a requirement that you have to take at least one, either, I think it's like ethics or philosophy class. So I ended up taking an intro to political philosophy the next semester, and really enjoyed that. And then from there, I ended up, I think the semester after that, I ended up declaring my major as philosophy.
So that class really hit it off for you then?
Yeah. It was like, my impression of philosophy in high school was that it was very like arcane and like not practical. And then I think taking my political philosophy class, and then also I took a class in like intro to logic as well. And taking those two classes, I think, gave me a better feel for what philosophy was actually about,
That's great. So throughout your journey with starting philosophy and graduating with it and starting a business, who have been your greatest supporters and mentors that have helped you with your success?
So I've been contacted by a few different people in the philosophy professors that have been fairly helpful with explaining like certain logistical things about the niche. And then I would say one of my friends who's also an entrepreneur, we kind of help each other or whatever, but it's nice to have someone to be able to communicate with about entrepreneurship stuff, because you run into like a lot of challenges and whatnot, and just being able to communicate with someone that sees kind of the same sorts of issues, if slightly different, is very helpful. So yeah.
Right. So your friend that's an entrepreneur, has he or she been doing entrepreneurship for about as long as you have? It's been about 6 months to a year for you, right?
Yeah, so it's been about a year at this point for me, and so he's like a little bit more established. He's been doing it for, I think, like 2 or 3 years. He's a little bit older than me too, so it's definitely sort of like a mentor-mentee, me being the mentee and him being the mentor relationship. So yeah.
All right. So I obviously looked through your website, and you had stated that you credit much of your work to your philosophy degree to the energy that coffee gave you. Many of your coffee brands are also named after avid coffee drinkers such as Kant, Voltaire, Kierkegaard. Do you consider all these philosophers to be kindred spirits?
So I would say I admire qualities in each of them, I would say, and in every philosopher that I have either made a coffee
Mm,
dedicated to, or have written about or whatever, like there's definitely some admiration there.
mm,
I would say out of the ones you listed, I would say like Voltaire is
mm,
probably he's the one that I probably admire most out of those,
mm.
just because he had this like willingness to like go against authority,
Right.
and question assumptions that had been made by authority at the time.
Mm,
And I think that it's important to be able to do that, like because like we don't know what sort of systems right now could be potentially unethical or immoral, or just suboptimal,
mm,
that are super enforced by whichever uh, people or groups in power.
mm.
So I think, yeah, Voltaire definitely. Kant, I admire his gusto. Like, he's quite, to read Kant is like is a chore at times, for me at least. I'm sure some people it's their cup of tea, but for me it's like it's difficult to get through sometimes.
Right.
And then I haven't actually read that much Kierkegaard.
Mhm.
So yeah.
So do you feel like, since we do with high school students a lot, you'd recommend Voltaire out of those three guys?
Yeah, I think so. One of the, like I was talking earlier about the history classes that I took.
Mhm,
I think so. I think in one of the history class, or in my European history class, we either read the entirety or at least parts of Candide,
mhm,
which I think is like, I mean, it's like not. I wouldn't say it's like a traditional philosophical text, but I think that it has, there's important messages and whatnot in it. And so I think that and I think it's also it's very easily approachable for high school students. So
mhm.
something like that. I would say definitely not Kant though. Like
Yeah.
I wouldn't start someone on Kant, but I don't know. What do I know, right? So
So for us, we're the philosophy outreach program. Each week, the students of our program help facilitate conversations at our local high school's philosophy club. We're also
mm.
active on social media to spread awareness. We've reached over 500 fans in dozens of schools in Indiana. As a graduate of philosophy, is there anything that you would like these students to know?
Yeah, I think that one of the big reasons that I didn't get more into philosophy in high school, other than the fact that it wasn't really offered, was that, and even that I was hesitant when I first went to college.
Mm,
I was almost, like I saw the requirement of like I have to take philosophy or an ethics class, and I was like,
mhm.
that's dumb. Why do I have to do that? Right? If I want to major in
Right.
bio, why would I have to, or I'd have to be ethical, right?
Right.
but like the point, yeah, exactly. Like, but the point is that like obviously I was dead wrong about that stuff, and what's more, like I ended up majoring in philosophy, and I use the skills that I learned in the course of completing my philosophy degree on a daily basis, because I think that especially with something like entrepreneurship, where you're I think there's such a good sort of crossover between the two topics, because with entrepreneurship, there's a lot of times there's like no best answer, and there's definitely no like, because you're trying to build something a lot of times that hasn't been built before. So there's no right answer, or there's no answer that like people know that you don't know, right? So you're constantly trying to figure out what the right answer is, or what an answer is, right? And so philosophy, I think, in a lot of ways is similar, where you have these philosophers are attacking a problem, right? And they and no one knows what the right answer, like the absolute best answer is, or else the conversation would be over, right? So they're attacking an undefined answer, right? And they're trying to get at that. And so, yeah, I would just say to high school students that philosophy number one, is not useless, and number two, in many fields it has its applications,
Mm,
and some of those fields are quite lucrative, right? If you have students that are interested in, become making lots of money or whatever, right? Like I they shouldn't rule out philosophy, right? So
right.
that's what I would say. That's coming from the entrepreneurship slant. I'm sure there's other slants to attack it from as well.
Right. So how did you decide to found a posteriori coffee company, and why did you pick the name?
So, so I decided to found a posteriori coffee company because basically, so like whenever I got into entrepreneurship about a year ago, like the first business that I started was like, it was like I was selling like I was selling like dog toys and stuff,
Mhm.
right? And I like dogs, but I didn't really feel like I was like I was monetarily benefiting myself, but
Mhm.
I wasn't really doing anything, like for anyone else, right? I mean, obviously, like people like their dogs and they like their dogs to have toys and whatnot,
Right.
but but it seemed a little bit it seemed a little bit small, I guess, right?
Right.
And so I was thinking like what is a way that I can help people, right? And I whenever I came across philosophy in college, it really first of all, it gave me a major, which was like one of the biggest questions in my life at that point was like, what am I going to major in?
Right.
And so it gave me a major that I really liked doing. And then the other thing is I noticed crossover between the benefits that philosophy sort of imparted on the rest of my education, right? But also I saw benefits from philosophy entering my personal life, right?
Mhm.
Like and just being able to think more clearly about certain things in the personal arena or whatever
Mhm.
really helped me. And so I was, initially I was, whenever that happened, I was a little bit frustrated that I hadn't found philosophy earlier, right?
Right.
And and I think that like so basically when I came across these charities, right, like these public philosophy programs and these pre-college philosophy programs and whatnot, I was really like I was like super jazzed about their mission because I was thinking about like if I had been exposed to philosophy at an earlier age, maybe I don't know what would have happened, right? Like I'm glad where I ended up anyways, but like who knows what would have happened, right? So uh so I think that, and then the other thing was that I really I've always been like a big coffee drinker, like
Mhm.
ever since I was really young. And even like I remember like my mom used to be like, you can't drink coffee, and I would still like try to drink it as much as I could. But so I've always been a big coffee drinker. And so and the other thing was that basically like when you mentioned earlier how I, credited my work to coffee or whatever.
Mhm.
Like so there's there were a non-zero number of philosophy essays that I, pulled all-nighters on and just
Mhm.
was like downing coffee while writing them. So so yeah, so I think it was like a natural pairing. And as far as the name goes, I wanted to make, so I actually brainstormed like a lot of names with my friends
Mhm.
who also were philosophy majors or whatever.
Mhm.
And I ended up landing on a priori coffee, but I looked it up and it was like there's some like Vietnamese cafe or something that has a priori coffee.
Uh-huh.
And I, like it's in Vietnam, so I could have like taken it, in the US, but I think it's better to just have like a, your own thing,
Right.
and not to be confused or competing or whatever.
Mhm.
So yeah, so I just did the opposite, a posteriori, right?
Mhm.
So and then from that, like the tagline, like coffee that must be experienced, came, and then like the whole, like John Locke is the logo.
Mhm.
And yeah, so then it all just fell into place after that, basically.
Right. You had just mentioned the logo. I saw that you released a new coffee recently with a different logo. Would you
Yeah.
tell me about that?
Yeah, so basically, so it's our Ubermensch blend, right? So
Mhm,
it's
mhm,
in it. So most coffees use Arabica beans,
mhm,
and so they're like a little bit different flavor than the alternative, which is Robusta, but they
mhm,
have less caffeine. So Robusta
mhm.
beans have nearly double the caffeine that Arabica beans have, like
Wow.
per bean, right?
Mhm,
And so the Ubermensch blend is 100% Robusta beans, and then it's also a medium light roast. So when you're roasting coffee, like the longer you roast it, the more caffeine gets denatured,
mhm,
and so like it's a common misconception actually that darker roasts are have more caffeine than lighter roasts,
mhm.
but actually lighter roasts have more caffeine than darker
Oh,
roasts. So
I didn't know it.
so this is a medium light roast, and it's the Ubermensch blend, and so basically, I thought it'd be great if like, so the new logo or whatever the label art is
Mhm,
it has basically like sort of like a crossover between a superhero, right,
mhm,
and Nietzsche, you know,
mhm.
so it's like Nietzsche pulling open his
Right.
shirt, and then he has like the umlaut, right, which
Mhm,
is like for the Ubermensch or whatever from the
right.
German. So yeah, so check it out if you're watching. So
I'll probably be ordering one soon. I've been able to try I think I have the dualism blend, and it's really good. I
mhm.
really like it.
Yeah, so they're actually all like, so what I'm doing at this point is I'm going back through and I'm going to update all the logos,
Mhm,
because I think I mean right now, like, I love John Locke, but
mhm.
but you know, having John Locke on every single coffee as the label art, I think is a little bit it's not you know, it's not the best.
Right.
So I'm going to go back through with all the labels and hire people to redo the label art, and then also we're gonna rename our single origins to specific philosophers
Mhm,
or topics in philosophy or whatever. So yeah,
mhm.
that should be done, you know, within the next quarter or whatever.
Yeah. You're saying we, and I've looked on your website. There's not a
Hmm.
lot mentioned about how big your team is. But how big is your team?
Yeah, so basically, so I have it's primarily me, right?
Mhm,
And then the coffee roasters are people that I've contracted
mhm,
that are in California. And then I have a couple designers that I work with
mhm.
on the internet who are located in like all across the world. So,
Right.
but it's primarily me. Like most,
Mhm,
like if I'm interacting with, or if like the social media accounts are interacting with someone, it's me. Like it's
right.
they are stand-ins for me or whatever. Or like they're yeah. So it's always gonna be me on social media, and you
Mhm,
know, I'll let people know if that changes. So yeah, but primarily everything is me. But then the
mhm.
design, if you see any designs, those are all. I am not artistically talented whatsoever. So
Right.
that is all other people. So yeah.
Yeah, I think that's really great that you're in one location. You're in, Pittsburgh, and
Mm,
you're able to get your coffee all the way from across the nation and getting help from
yeah,
everybody across the globe is great.
yeah, it's neat. It's neat. I mean, it's crazy the stuff you can do now with the internet.
Mhm,
Like, just because you think about the you know, this business model, and like, you know, 20 years ago it would have been impossible, you know, and
mhm.
or well, I
Exactly.
guess not 20, but 30 years ago would have been absolutely impossible. Right.
Right.
But now you know, now it's like it's really I think it really has, the internet has really opened the doors for like a lot of people. Like there's been a
Mhm,
lot of bad stuff that happens on the internet, but there's also a
right.
lot of good that it does as well. I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. So definitely for if any high schoolers or college students want to start their business, they can just hop online and just get going.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I would say like just like to anyone who, you know, is wanting to start a business, I would just say like just start, like, because you're like one of the things that I got caught up in when I was starting is like I needed to like plan everything, you know, and like I
Mhm,
needed this plan, but then like you end
mhm,
up trying to execute the plan, and your plan has like 100 steps, and then
mhm.
like you get like 2 steps in, and you're like, oh wait, like this step doesn't work, right? So now the
Right.
rest of my 98 steps are trash, right?
Mhm,
So yeah, so just start, you know,
mhm.
and you know, you're gonna learn along the way, basically, is what I would say.
Right.
Yeah.
So, your company donates 20% of its profits to the philosophy programs for K through 12 students, which you mentioned a little bit before. How did you decide to do this, and how often do you donate that money?
hmm So I decided to do that. I think I kind of covered that before. Like basically,
Mhm,
I came across these charities, and really gelled with like their message,
right,
and was inspired to sell product so
mhm,
that I could donate the 20% or whatever.
yeah,
And uh, so I'm sorry. So the question was basically, how did I come to do this? How often do we donate? So we
mhm,
donate basically, or I donate quarterly, right?
mhm,
And along with that, there's I send out like a survey to our customers, and then also to like our social media accounts and whatnot. I send out a
mhm,
survey that basically people can vote on, and the votes end up basically determining the partitioning of the funds that are donated to
mhm,
whichever charities. And yeah, so it's still it's still a work in progress as far as finding like the absolute final charities that we want to donate, or that I want to
mhm,
donate to, or like or getting the donation survey to be like out there enough that where
mhm,
like people are answering it and stuff. But yeah, so quarterly. And then the other thing that I've wanted to that I really want to do, and I'm like I'm trying to come up with a way to do this that makes sense, is basically like I want it to be very like public, because like I don't want people to think that like I don't want people to think I'm just taking the money, and not
right,
donating it. So I want it to be like very public as far as like we donated this, we made this, or whatever. So
mhm.
I'm looking into ways to do that basically. So yeah, so that's that.
All right. So I have one final question. So, Café de Flore in Paris,
hmm
France, is a well-known cafe that many famous writers and philosophers frequented over the years. If you were to be at that cafe drinking coffee at a table with any philosophers of all time, dead or alive, who would be sitting at your table?
um So yeah, I thought about this question like when I received it or whatever. I
Mhm,
thought about this question a lot, because it's a difficult question, because like there's like I'd be absolutely I would be super happy to sit down with any of the really like any philosophers, right?
mhm,
But I think that if I had my pick of the litter, I would go for probably I do like Plato or Socrates, or
mhm.
like if I can pick as many as I'd do both, right? So
Right. Yeah.
Plato and Socrates, right? Assuming they're not the same person, right?
Mhm,
And then someone more modern, I do Charles Sanders Peirce. From He's like an American pragmatist or whatever, and because he's like I feel like out of all the philosophers I've read, I felt like his stuff was like, to me it was like stuff where I was like, this really I mean a lot of philosophers I've read, I've thought like this makes sense, but to me like he was like on a different level of like uh, uh and the diversity of like topics that he approached as well was just
mhm.
pretty astounding. So yeah.
All right. Well, I really appreciate you taking the time to do this interview. Do you have any questions for me or about our group before we head out?
No, just thank you so much for reaching out to me and,
Mhm.
having this, because it was a lot of fun, and also yeah, just like keep in touch or whatever. So
Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah. All right.
All right. Well, I'll see you.
All right. See you
Mhm.
later.
See ya.
Bye.
Bye.